And you can hit the next slide. So we have Miley, who graduated in May of 2020. And then we have Morgan, who graduated in 2017, and Elizabeth, who graduated in 2015. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Miley and go to the next slide. As I just said, Miley graduated in May of 2020 and is currently a grad student at Northwestern University with a Master of Science in Health Communication. So Miley, I'll hand it over to you so you can get started.
Thank you, Lindsay. So my name is Miley. I currently am, this weekend, we'll be starting our spring quarter. So halfway through the program, but I'm at Northwestern doing health communications. Like Lindsay said, I graduated back in May. And so I would say I'm still fairly fresh. So I still feel like I'm an undergrad sometimes. But yeah, other than that, it's just right now I'm just working and being a full-time student. So I'm very excited to see what the future holds when I graduate in August. But yeah, I'm very excited.
Perfect. So I forgot to mention, we do have a Q&A at the end of the session, so we'll be able to get more into a deeper dive into some questions there. So next up we have Morgan. She's currently a graduate admissions recruiter at UWGB, graduated from UWGB in May of 2017. And then you got your Master's of Science from UW La Crosse in Student Affairs Administration, if I can read tonight. So I'll let you speak a little bit to that because obviously you knew more about that than I do.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. So yeah, I am a UWGB alum, and I was actually on the inaugural Communication Comm Week planning team. So it's always fun to be able to come back and see all the new fun things that's happening. So yeah, I graduated from GB in May of 2017, like Lindsay said. My emphases were OrgComm and PR, and I had a minor in business as well. And then I kind of left. I thought I wanted to be an event planner, so I left and I did that for a little while. And then I was like, wow, I really miss higher ed. So I came back to GB and I worked at GBOS, the Green Bay One Stop Shop in student services. And then while I did that, I also was a grad student full-time online through UW La Crosse. So I graduated from that last May. So like Miley said, I feel like fresh still. Like I feel like I haven't really been out of school that long. Just because, you know, the pandemic has been weird and all that. And so now I just recently started, UWGB just created the graduate admissions recruiter position because our grad programs are growing so much. We've grown in the last 5 years about 500%. So they're like, wow, we should really, you know, have somebody help people with their applications and things like that. So I was really excited to be able to apply to that. I've been in the role for almost 2 months, between a month and a half and 2 months now. So it's been really fun just to kind of be able to talk with students, you know, at UWGB and other schools who are in their undergraduate programs and connect on that level. And then, you know, also being a recent grad student, being able to talk about my experiences too, even though they weren't necessarily at GB, but it's been really fun so far. So I'm excited to answer any questions you all have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then we'll head on over to Elizabeth, graduated in 2015, obviously from UWGB, and is currently a PhD candidate at the University of South Florida in interpersonal communication. So I'll hand it over to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Both of the other presenters have said that they feel fresh. I feel whatever the opposite of fresh is. I've been in grad school a long time, not you know, forever, but long enough. So let's see here. Yeah, so I graduated from UW Green Bay in 2015, and then I got my master's degree at Purdue University on campus in West Lafayette, Indiana. And then my advisor, actually, his wife took a position as department chair down here in Tampa. So I followed him to Florida. So it is about 90 degrees outside right now as we speak. Yes. So let's see. So between my bachelor's and master's, I took a year off and I actually worked in Milwaukee. I was a training specialist. So I was a learning and development manager. I built like e-learning courses for a multi-billion-dollar company downtown and lived downtown. And absolutely, fascinating work. I just absolutely hated it. And I, didn't want to sit in a gray cubicle for the rest of my life. And I loved learning and I was a good writer. And I wanted independence and flexibility in my career and in terms of things that I wanted to do. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons that I went to grad school. So I will actually be defending my dissertation. So I will be Dr. Hintz as of May 21st. And then I start a position as an assistant professor of health communication at the University of Connecticut in August, which is wild. So, so I have been through it all the way to the end. If you have questions about anything, don't hesitate to let me know. Also, Miley, just out of curiosity, do you work with Courtney Shear?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Are you on campus?
No, we are not. We're doing virtual.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Okay, never mind. But she's there and does health communication. Anyway, okay.
Awesome. Thank you all for, sharing your background a little bit with us. So why don't we take a dive into the Q&A portion of tonight. Does anybody have a question to start off? Otherwise, I know I definitely do. Birds chirping. Okay, so this one is definitely for Morgan specifically as a recruiter for graduate school. What would you say is the most important part of an applicant's, application?
Yeah, good question. So I think that the standard answer is just that you meet all of the requirements that whatever program you're applying to has laid out. So whether they, have a 3.0 GPA and I don't know, 2 references, things like that. Personally, as a recruiter and just I worked in undergraduate admissions for 3 years as well. The big difference between undergraduate admissions and graduate admissions is either way, we're probably going to read your personal statement. But it's even more important at the graduate level to say, why this program, because every program is so different. It's not just like an overall, I just really like this college and I think I don't know what I want to do. I'm undecided or things like that. It's very specific for the most part. Especially the programs at GB, a lot of them are professional programs. So we have very niche areas. So being able to just really say, this is my background, this is why it fits well with this program, and this is what I want to do once I'm done with the program, is huge. And I was actually just at a conference last week virtually. And many schools we did a holistic admission session, and most of the schools said that the personal statement is the most important part of an applicant's portfolio. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So then with that, I know when I was applying to grad schools too, a lot of places didn't have like a structured personal statement, but then when I applied to one school, they had like a very structured personal statement. So looking at the unstructured ones, how would you say you would structure that then? Would you go and look at like a structured personal statement and kind of go off of that, or would you try to do something more creative?
That's a really good question. And since I've only been in my role for like 2 months, I haven't seen a ton of them yet. Specifically for, just as an example, our Masters of Social Work has a structured personal statement. They have like a questionnaire they want you to fill out. So I haven't actually seen those yet because those close in December. So I've seen a lot more of like the open-ended ones. And I don't know. I have seen most of them. Some tell a story, which is always really interesting. If somebody's a really good writer, they like poetry. I've seen somebody include poetry already. Just different things that make your personal statement stand out. If you are a really creative person, I think that's a great way to go about that, because you do want to be able to stand out from the rest of the applicants. But I think just really highlighting your experiences and how they relate to the program. And then especially if it, so some programs, you know, have a capstone project and some are a thesis. So if you are applying for a program that has a thesis track, you would want to kind of explain what you think you might be interested in terms of research, because that can be a huge thing as well. And Elizabeth might even be able to talk a little bit better about that, being a PhD student, than I can with the whole research side of it, because my grad program that I had was a capstone. I don't know what Miley's is, but is a little bit different than a thesis. So depending on what type of program you're looking for, they might want to see different parts of that in your personal statement.
Elizabeth, I saw you shaking your head there. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, great thoughts. Important question. I think this gets at a bigger difference, or a more important sort of larger point, which is that there are different kinds of programs that you can apply to, right? So you can apply to a program that is more skills based or technical, like for example, a strategic communication master's degree, which focuses on specific traits or skills that you'll build that then translate into a career, typically. Whereas there are also more research-based master's programs that culminate in a thesis, like Morgan mentioned, and where you would be primarily focused on doing research and typically teaching if you're funded, which you can get money to go to grad school. We can talk about that, like fully funded tuition waiver, stipend, the whole shebang. But so differences and figuring out which type of master's degree you want to apply to. Like Morgan, I imagine your master's was more applied, given your interest in working in higher education. That's different from a master's degree that is like research based. Like I was on campus at Purdue working with faculty members and doing research with them. So different programs for different aims, not that one is better or worse than the other. They just serve different purposes. So that would affect how you write your statement, because like you want to write your statement for the purpose of the program that you're applying to, which is, so.
Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so I'm Jacqueline. I actually helped put together this slideshow thing for alumni. I'm part of the COMM Week team, but do you think like grad school is worth it in your opinion? Because I'm like on the fence about it. Because I know it's a lot of money, so I don't know. Like, what is your advice? Because I'll be graduating in May, so like, give any advice to like give a graduating student?
I mean, my experience is different. So like I mentioned, I have not paid a single penny to do any of my education past undergrad, like at all. You can get funding to go to grad school where they pay your tuition, you get a tuition waiver. You might have to pay fees by semester, but it's like a couple $100s. And then you get a stipend, which is like a wage on which to live. You're not going to be living like lavishly, but you won't have to take out loans to survive. And that is common at most universities, that like UW-Milwaukee, for example, has a funded master's program. UW-Madison has a funded master's program, and you could think broadly beyond the scope of Wisconsin. I never thought I'd leave Wisconsin, but I encourage you to look outside of the box, because there are great programs all over the place. Not that Indiana is like that much better, but in terms of living, but and then is it worth it? I mean, what do you want to do? You know, that's the question.
Yeah.
So how do you evaluate whether or not it's worth it? Well, will it get you to a place, if you're just going to delay getting work experience, that would further your career. If your career is the ultimate goal and you don't need a master's degree to do that job, then maybe you don't get a master's degree. But if you want to do a job that requires higher in terms of difficulty or technicality skills or specific experience that doing a master's would give you, or if your particular career is competitive in some way and having a master's degree would set you apart, or the job requires a master's degree, then absolutely get a master's degree. But I think the biggest thing, and I'm with colleagues in grad school, and I see people all the time who would just go to grad school because they feel like it's the next thing to do, and it's like,
Yeah.
what do you want to get out of it? What is the end goal, and how can going to graduate school get you there? Now, when I was a senior in undergrad, I didn't say, oh, I want to be a professor, right? Like that wasn't what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
I knew that I loved to write, and I knew that I wanted to continue to learn and gain skills. And I actually applied to Purdue in org to be an organizational development manager. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And I could have done that with a master's degree from Purdue and been just fine. But I discovered that I just love higher ed. But so yeah, what is it that you want to do, and what do you need to get there? And if you do a master's degree, you can get funded for it.
Yeah.
So that it costs a lot of money, not necessarily. So something to think about. Okay, others.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a little question as well. So kind of down the same path, not, I mean, I imagine that you're going to tell me it depends on what I want to do, but I'm also curious about higher education as an older adult. So I know that most people do go straight into their master's after they graduate grad school. I mean, after they graduate like from UWGB, but many times they're usually 18, 19, 20, fresh out of school. So as an adult, I'll be 30 this year, and I would like, I love higher education myself. Like I just love being here. So I've been here for a very long time, but I wonder if it is worth it for somebody that would be a little bit older to go through that extra learning curve, or should I just kind of try to jumpstart my career instead?
So
Go ahead.
I'll give Miley a chance first. Miley, do you have anything? Otherwise, I have an answer.
Yeah, so kind of just relating back to my program. So my program is built around working professionals, and I would say I'm the youngest one there. A lot of students, a lot of my peers in my cohort are either like they're like nurses or whatever, and making a career change. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but a lot of them are nervous. I remember calling back to the first day. A lot of them are nervous and saying, "Oh, like I don't feel like I'm ready. I don't feel this and that because I've been out of school for so long." But right now, I'm see like they're thriving, and a lot of them, I'm learning so much from them, just from their jobs, their everyday jobs, their professional jobs, and so I would say for you, Liz, I think that if you are thinking about it, I definitely think it's worth it. And don't set yourself on a timeline or a deadline to finish your degree by a certain age. Just because a lot of my cohort, students in my cohort are a lot older than me, and sometimes they're older than the professors too. And so I love learning from them each and every day, and it's crazy, but it's like I love it so much when I'm seeing so many different perspectives coming from all type of career. And so yeah,
Thank you.
I'll chime in.
You want to add?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll chime in, both related to your question and piggybacking on Jacqueline's question as well. I love stats, which I would have never said in undergrad in a million years. But now in my job, I love looking at all the different stats. And things that I learned at the conference that I went to last week was specifically for schools in the Midwest. So it can be different, but many of the schools see at least a 1 to 2 year gap between undergraduate and grad school. So students are taking time off, especially right now with the pandemic, just because, finances, if you are in a program that, has limited graduate assistantships or teaching assistantships or things like that, where you may have to pay out of pocket. But typically people are waiting a few years in between. To answer Jacqueline's question, I took a gap year, and I know Elizabeth said she took a gap year as well. Part of that was I wanted to save a little bit of money and kind of figure out what exactly I wanted to do before I jumped into a program. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a program in higher ed or communication or, what that looked like quite yet. The second part of it was I found out that my job paid some tuition reimbursement. So that's something to look into as well, in addition to all the things Elizabeth said in terms of funding. My program was developed specifically for working adults. So many of the people in my program We were all over the US. It was online. We had a lot of our meetings like at night and on the weekends and things like that virtually. And a lot of my teammates in my cohort have families. They had kids. They had a full-time job and a part-time job. So I think that it's very, very common for people to go back to grad school, even more I think it's more common to see older non-traditional students in grad school than it is in undergrad. For example, I've been meeting with all the program chairs at GB, and a few of them said all of our students are between the ages of 30 and 50. We don't have any traditional students in our program. It's all people who, realize they can't climb the ladder at work anymore unless they have a master's degree, or like Miley said, they want a career change. A lot of like the more leadership focused programs are non-traditional students. If you're terming them that in grad school, there really isn't a non-traditional student. But yeah, super, super common.
Yeah, I was just gonna say my best friend in my master's, I was 21 when I started my master's program, and he was 38. And he was a doctoral student, and he's a professor now. My good friend in my doctoral program was an empty nester who got her PhD in her 50s and is now, working at a large corporation here in Tampa. And I don't think that it's uncommon at all, as others have said, and even in research oriented programs. Yeah, at all. Yeah.
I will also add, just as an example, just today I got an application from a woman who's 58. She worked in agriculture her whole entire life and realized that as part of her agriculture based career, she actually really loves sustainability. And so now she's like, now my kids are off to school. Now it's time I can focus on me, and I want to go get a degree, an advanced degree in sustainability. So like Elizabeth said, like it's totally all over the board. Some of my favorite people in my program, were old enough to be my mom. And it was just awesome because you just get so many different awesome viewpoints from people. And that's just you learn from each other and not just your instructors or your textbooks. You're learning from everyone else's work experiences and life experiences as well.
Can I add to that a little bit? So a lot of like the students in my cohort, they come from different, they have different jobs with different companies. And so you actually, if they have, it's a really good like job opportunity too, because they will share, hey, my company's hiring for this position, in case you're interested. And so that's a really good opportunity for you too. And so, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the information because I'm still thinking.
We have a Phil Clampett contribution in the comments.
Yes, I'm so proud of you guys, and it's great to see the success story. So I don't mean to interrupt, Liz. I just got home and I wanted to join in and watch the success stories, and so I'm very proud of you guys. So I hope that we did our job well. So. You can, I don't mean to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt the flow, but we love what you guys are doing and how successful you are, and just I'm so proud of you. So I just want you to know that.
Thank
Liz,
you.
I don't know is Liz
Appreciate it.
running. Is Liz running this?
Lindsay's running this.
All me, Phil.
Yeah, but I mean, you guys should feel so good, and it's a very unusual program we have because everybody wants to give back and everybody wants to, help everybody else. And that's a great thing. So I can't tell you how proud I am. So, and, it's all about doing great stuff for other people and making the world a better place. And goodness knows we need that, don't we?
So I'll give the floor to someone else if someone else has a question. Otherwise, I always have one. So I don't want to stumble
I
over.
have one question that, I'm always interested in continuous improvement. Maybe the grads can tell us what we need to do to get better here. And then that's kind of a selfish question, but what did you take away that you were wowing them with out there? And then that's on the upside, and on the downside, what could we improve on? I know Morgan's going to say we should have done more stats, and I'm there. So we're terrible at that. I get that. So I'll listen.
So I actually wouldn't say stats, although I do love them now. I would have absolutely dreaded that as an undergraduate student. But Phil, I think that UWGB needs a master's in communication, because you and all the rest of the faculty are fabulous, and we have so many fabulous students. And I'm not saying that because I'm the graduate recruiter, but I know a lot of people who have gone on from our program to grad school, and I think it would be cool to be able to keep some of the students doing the awesome things that they're doing at GB.
Yeah, this is a great question. I knew nothing. I shouldn't lie. Honestly, a part of the allure of the major was that I didn't have to do statistics, which I now do all the time. I was doing them right before this call. So yeah, I think that would have been helpful. I'm not sure. I took Lalea Fernandez's 290 course when I was there. But yeah, one of the things, I mean, in terms of things that were beneficial, I had the ability to ask the kinds of strategic and critical questions that I didn't see in my colleagues when I got to Purdue. Even something as simple as questioning the assumptions that undergird the decisions that we make in the way that we talk to others and how we approach problems and questions, and the assumptions within the articles that we read and these sorts of things. Even things as simple as that, or asking what the practical contribution of a particular study is, or this, the so what question. Always having that in mind. What does this do for promoting good? What does this do for sort of the average person? Those sorts of questions, especially in a program that is geared toward research, were incredibly helpful. I also didn't know a whole lot about like the field in terms of research beyond like I don't think I knew what an academic journal was when I got to grad school. Like I think I sat in on my first day at Purdue and the professor said we're going to read a journal article, and I think I called my parents and said, oh my god, we're going to read the professor's diary, that sort of thing. It's like it's not quite it. But yeah, so thinking about like conferences. Morgan mentioned a conference. Were you at Central States, Morgan?
No, I was at MAGS, the
Oh,
Midwestern
okay.
Association of Grad Schools.
Sorry,
No,
sidetracked.
you're good.
But yeah, like what are the conferences? What is research? What are the contemporary theories that are being used in the field? We love Fishbein. We love theory of reasoned action, but the integrated behavioral model is like the new iteration of that, right? And people are using that, and that's contemporary. And so thinking about sort of reading more contemporary research and grounding or incorporating more contemporary theory, because those are frameworks that are useful now to people who are doing practical work, like Miley, I'm sure we'll talk about in terms of health comm, especially some of these sorts of things. But yeah, it was a big learning curve for me. But at the same time, I had advantages over other students in ways that were helpful. So that's sort of both of the questions at once.
For me, well, I completely agree with Elizabeth and Morgan. I definitely think we do need a master's program for communications. But for me, especially, I might be a little biased because health communications, but definitely expand health communications. And I know definitely Katie's health communications and internet class definitely gave me, like, prepared me mentally and physically, prepared me to kind of what grad school is. And a lot of what she teaches in that class is what we're doing. We read a lot of journals, we write a lot of paper. And so yeah, that's probably like one of the things that I would say to improve on, but I might be a little biased on that. But definitely one thing that the comm department prepared me for is group work, working in group projects. And I don't know, I just feel like so good about speaking and presenting. And it's just, I feel like the comm department really trained me to be a really good team player in group projects, especially since we're doing so much group projects now. But yeah, so definitely give props to the comm communication for preparing me for that mentally and physically.
I forgot about all the group work. I forgot about that until now. Yes. Anyway.
I want to chime back in because mine wasn't actually very constructive. It was like a haha. So I agree with Miley and Elizabeth with both the critical thinking, the so what's, the group work, all that. The biggest takeaway that I'm using in my current role is really being able to analyze the audience. It's huge. I do a lot of marketing. So, and when I worked in, events and in undergraduate admissions, it was all very much, what is your target audience? What is the message you're trying to clearly and concisely convey? The one thing in terms of my graduate program that I felt I lacked in compared to others was writing a research paper or a lit review. And I know that we did some of that. And I wasn't around when health communication was there. So I know Miley just mentioned that she was able to do that in some of those courses, but I didn't really get a whole lot of that. So I kind of felt like behind the 8 ball on what it looked like to write a paper in APA format. And, I was more used to putting together media kits and things like that. So for me, and like Elizabeth said, it was more of like the current research, what an academic journal is, how to write an APA format, more of like the research based things, just because our program is so applied and like real world, working world focused rather than like on the research side of it. So I think that's just the nature of the program, but definitely something I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense given what most students are going to do, right? And so it's great at accomplishing its purpose. But yeah, in terms of in terms of research related things, which again, how many people are going to be writing extensive lit reviews in their jobs, like these sorts of, considerations are weighed, and I think weighed appropriately. But yeah, in terms of going to graduate school for the students who are interested in those things. But I had 2 pubs when I applied for my master's because I edited Phil's textbook and he acknowledged me, and I had little like a case study published in 2 of your textbooks. So on my CV to apply to grad school, I had pubs with Phil Clampett from doing research assistantships. So there are little opportunities to get that experience now that I recall doing that. So we're not totally unprepared, certainly. And yeah, you were my first pub, Phil.
So I have a question for the grads. So what was the worst day of graduate school?
I can go first. Worst day is probably the first day. Just because, I don't know, it was, for me, it was different because it was all virtual. And so it was really hard to really like get the feel of everyone, especially there's like 60 of us. And so, yeah, I would say the first day it was, I don't know, wasn't the worst or the best, but I would say compared to the days that I've had, it was definitely the first day.
Yeah.
Mine was probably the day that I found out I wouldn't be able to present my capstone project because I worked for like 3 semesters on it, right? And then we were supposed to have a big poster session. It's the day before commencement. You get to share it, you get to defend it, that kind of a thing. And we didn't get to because of COVID. And I didn't get my free poster. And so now I'm printing one and having to pay for it to put it in my office. So, but mine was probably just the day where I didn't get to share the research that I had done, just because I was so excited, you know, to get feedback on it mostly, which most people probably wouldn't say, but that's the calm person in me, I guess. But I was just really excited to be able to share my findings and my research, and be able to really participate in like the Q&A defense portion of that and get feedback from my peers and teachers and all that.
Good to know.
I don't think my answer is going to be particularly helpful, but I'll answer anyway. My worst day in grad school was the last day of writing my preliminary exam. So when you do a PhD, you do 2 years of coursework, and then you sit exams that determine whether or not you get to continue in the program. And so I wrote like 200 pages in like a week and was very tired. And that was the worst day in grad school. That's not a helpful answer, Phil, I already know, but it was stressful. It was hard. It was a lot, but that's the point of
So
it.
you
So
were exhausted at the end, Liz?
I was
Or just
fundamentally exhausted. Yeah.
Oh.
100%.
Well, fun.
Thank you.
Well, I have just the opposite reaction. When I'm done with it, it's like I'm exhausted, but I sure sleep well that night. So I get it. So.
Do we have any more questions from anyone? Otherwise, I can ask my last question. I'm good with that. So I am particularly curious about working during grad school. So I have a job that's 30 hours a week, and then I'm a part-time grad school student. So I want to see how other people have been doing it, and kind of compare. And then I know students are also, you know, going into grad school, also wanting that work experience. So if you guys could speak to that a little bit, that'd be great.
For me, I would say, because I don't have a lot of experience in healthcare, I'm taking all the opportunities that I can. And so whether that's a full-time job or a part-time job or internship, just really getting myself in the door with healthcare and how the environment is. So right now I'm currently full-time at Planned Parenthood. And so that's kind of like my very first like healthcare experience and how to communicate with patients, working directly with patients. That has helped me really change my perspectives on how patients are receiving healthcare. And so it's been a lot since I do work 40 hours a week, and plus on Saturdays I have class from 9 to 5. And so it's been a lot, but it's been very helpful because I'm able to apply on what I do every day to the papers that I write or the discussions I have with my cohort. And so it's a lot, but like Elizabeth and Morgan said, it's totally worth it for me. I'm getting really the experience that I needed after grad school. And so, yeah.
So I can talk about my experience working full-time while in grad school as well. But also I just want to touch on, if you do have a full-time job or you are planning on working while you're in grad school, be very conscious about the type of program you're choosing to do. For example, my program, and it sounds like my Lee's program, are both designed for working adults. My program specifically, you had a few different options. So they have an in-person cohort where typically people don't have a full-time job. The classes are during the day, just like in undergrad. They have a hybrid option for people who are that one's typically for GAs or grad assistants. So they are working on campus as well as taking courses. And then my cohort was specifically for working adults who work full-time and then are taking their classes fully online, and having, you know, our meetings and things at night. So just being really conscious about what exactly the expectations are of the program in terms of meeting times and workload and their support and flexibility. Because I know that there were times where, you know, everyone in my program was like, it's the first week of school for us and for us in school and at work, like it's going to be a crazy week. And our professors were like, yep, we know, like, we don't have any assignments this week. So just kind of like ease into it. We'll go harder. Like, you know, in the middle of the semester when you're probably not quite as busy, things like that. So just being able to really be able to talk with your advisor and your faculty and know that they're going to be flexible. And then just being able to be really conscious of your time management skills, I think is huge. And I thought that in undergrad, but it was even more so important when working full time. My employer, UWGB, is really good with vacation time. So I used all of my vacation time for 2 years to work on homework. Like I did not use my vacation time for vacation ever. And so, you know, working with your employer even, and having them also realize that you might have meetings, you know, randomly that you might have to step away, and making sure that they're flexible with you as well. But really just time management is so key, and making sure that you are setting time aside both through your work and for yourself. Like I would typically take a break one weekend day. I would try not to do anything more than like 2 hours of homework, so I had time to like recharge, reset, spend time with my family or my friends, because otherwise I would just burn out. And then, you know, I would not one more and then I'm done. I never, this is before the world of working from home, but I could not do my homework at home. Like I stayed at the office from 7 a.m. until like 9 p.m. and then I went home, because I knew that if I went home, I wouldn't get anything done. I wouldn't be able to focus. So knowing kind of like where you're going to be on your A game and making sure that you're setting not only time aside, but a place aside where you can kind of separate out like life and school, so that when you're not, you know, working on your homework, you're able to relax and things like that, I think is important as well.
Yeah, and I taught at the college level in exchange for my tuition waiver. So I was employed what they call half-time, so like part-time, 20 hours a week, teaching college students. So I've been a college instructor for 5 years now, and that's how you get the tuition waiver that remits your tuition, and then you don't pay tuition. So, and you're at the university. So Morgan, I can't imagine 7 to 9 at the office doing homework, but yes, whatever works for you. So if anyone has questions about that, I won't waste any more time. Let me know.
Last chance. Anybody have any other questions? Yeah, Em, shoot.
Hi. Okay, so I'm M. Fecto originally from New Hampshire. So I moved out here maybe less than 3 years ago, I think. No, maybe it's 3 years now. It's time flies when you're having fun. But so I originally was going to school at Keene State College in Keene, New Hampshire for film production, and I had like an emphasis with the strong emphasis with cinematography. So that's where I left that school with. And I thought it was kind of interesting because, you know, not everyone's going to become like the next like Scorsese. And so I thought, okay, communications, let's do it. Like I love all that. But my like ultimate plan was to go back to the East Coast, which I thought was interesting with Elizabeth, with how you were in Connecticut, and that kind of made my interest go back to there. But my parents have always been a big supporter of going to graduate school, and the emphasis that I'm kind of focused on like for after graduating is kind of more in production wise kind of stuff. So I'm not sure if that's going to make me overqualified for a job in that industry, or would it help? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I'll talk about the research side of things. So if you wanted to do a master's degree that was less applied, you mentioned production, but media studies is an area of study in graduate school. People get master's degrees and doctorates in media studies, either in mass communication schools, or sometimes they're also in comm departments. Like we have a mass comm school at USF, but people in my department also like do graduate studies in film and media. So you could get a graduate degree in film and media that is not quite so technical, but is more theoretical, or research based. Like if you wanted to be somebody who studied media effects and like what does media do to us? What do media are plural, what do media do to us, right? And you know, you wanted to study advertising or film or whatever, you could do that. That is an option for graduate school. I will let others talk about other things.
So I personally don't know much about that field. So I love that Elizabeth took that and answered it. My comment is just about being overqualified. I don't know that you can really, I know it's a thing that people say, but I just had this conversation with a colleague the other day. Is we have a lot of openings that we're filling within the university right now. And there are people who say like, oh, so-and-so appears to be overqualified. Well, we were like, we don't really think so, because it really depends on, you know, where you're at in life. Do you want a career change? Like if I have 10 years of supervisory experience and I want to step down from that, like who's to say I can't do that, even if I'm overqualified for an entry-level job? I think that the idea of being overqualified is going away, just because people do career changes and they do, you know, grad school right out of undergrad and things like that, and get experience in different ways, where previously it was kind of, you know, undergrad, get a job, then maybe you go to grad school. People are doing things in all different orders. And so I would just argue that being overqualified is a myth. But I can't really speak to film and production and media that much, just because I'm not as familiar with that field, unfortunately.
But I mean, if you're substituting, I think like, so if you're substituting grad school for what could have been work experience, then do you run the risk of like coming out in 2 years or a year and being less qualified in terms of experience, but more credentialed? So you would like cost them more money to hire, but you have less experience. Like that's sort of the tension, right? Is between like experience and education. Because if somebody has a master's degree, I mean, they could work for the salary of someone with a bachelor's degree, but you know, then like what's the point of getting the master's degree, right? So Morgan, in your experience and from what you've seen and know so far, do you think that something like that would be a concern for Emily?
That's a great question. And I will argue that in some fields, you might, even if you have a master's degree, you might have to start at bachelor's degree level pay, just because that's where people start. And just know that you're ahead of the game for when you do want to move up. Typically people, at least in higher ed, it seems on the staff side, not as much on the faculty side, but if you have, you know, experience, well, if you have the degrees or credentials, you need less experience to move up faster. So for example, I know somebody who graduated from UWGB, was in the comm department with me. She started working and going to school at a university, and she graduated in 2017 with me, and she's already an assistant director of admissions. So like she got both the credentials and the experience. There's ways to do it without sacrificing one or the other. So it just kind of depends. Like Elizabeth said, she's been teaching at the college level for 5 years before she even had the credentials, which she's getting in May. So there's ways to do both, I think. And just if you are planning on doing grad school without the work experience, trying to get those high impact practices like the internships, the research assistantships, the teaching assistantships, those kinds of things, so that you can say, I have X amount of experience in this area as well. So I think if you don't have the working experience, fine, but try to figure out a way to also include high impact practices in your education.
For me, like Morgan said, I don't have much experience in production, but kind of just relating back to why I decided to pursue my master's degree in health communications is kind of, I always knew I wanted to be in a leadership position. And so that's kind of what pushed me to be there, because I knew that in this kind of, you can get a communications position literally anywhere. But I knew I wanted to take it to the next level. And so that's kind of kind of go back to kind of your question is, what do you, and we talked about this earlier too, about what do you really want to do in your career? And so, so yeah, I mean, you can definitely, like Morgan said, you can definitely get your degree, your credential, and work and seek experience at the same time. So when you're done, you're guaranteed that you're going to get a position that you want to do. And so definitely, it's just sometimes you kind of just have to make sacrifices. You know, while you're in school, for me, definitely right now is I'm taking sacrifices, and but I know that my end goal is not going to be this forever. It's going to potentially lead to something bigger, and so yeah.
I was actually just thinking, Purdue has a master's in media technology and society where you could teach video production and get paid as a TA and like get your tuition remitted, and their stipend is like 20 grand, which is pretty good for, yeah. So if you are interested in that, if you're going to go to grad school somewhere and you want to be able to go to a program that has video production where you can get a master's degree and kind of get both, like we were just talking about, that's one place to look. And if you have questions, we can talk more. Actually, I'll put my email in the chat. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for all of your answers. One last opportunity for anyone. Any other questions? Otherwise, I can get with my wrap up here.
I think I'm all
Ask
good.
us anything.
Liz?
Oh, I said, I think I'm all good. You guys have been very helpful today. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you everyone for participating, especially our speakers. We appreciate all of the time you've dedicated to us in both preparing for this and, you know, with the event. So students really appreciate it, and I'm sure people who watch this recording will also appreciate it going forward, because this will be on our UWGB COMM week website for people to watch in case they decided to go to the careers event tonight rather than this event, or they just weren't able to make it. So yes, we really appreciate it. And thank you so much for all of your time. We hope to see everyone at the banquet on Thursday. RSVP if you haven't already. That's at 6:30 again. So we hope to see you guys all there. So thanks again and have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and if you have
guys
any
so much.
questions,
Thank you.
let me know. Happy to talk with any of you about anything. And yeah, there are a variety. If you want to go to grad school, you know, there are a variety of like careers that are more technical, like governmental positions, nonprofit positions. Like you can have a career and grad school. The panels are not mutually exclusive. Okay, anyway, thank you.
That's why we're recording, so that everybody
Right.
can make sure they watch both of them. So we want to make sure we can get them out there. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
you all for
Have
having
a great
us.
night, everybody. See you Thursday.
See you Thursday.